So we often talk about the the corrosive issue of money in politics, how it can, of course, affect elections by our politicians, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it turns out that money doesn't have as much of an effect, and I've said this before, on presidential races, especially in caucus states. Now, in things like local elections, they do have a lot of pull and do have a lot of course, influence. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how badly Republicans wasted their money on Iowa for almost little return. And for that, I start out with former Governor Jeb Bush. Now, Jeb Bush, according to the International Business Times, spent, with his super PAC, over $14 million on TV ads in Iowa. Now, what did he get for it? He got 6th place. He probably got about, well, the official number is he got 2.8% of the vote. That's bad. That is really, really bad. So it turns out that once again, in the battle for the nomination, money spent on TV ads turned out to be a really, really bad investment. In fact, the candidates whose campaigns and affiliated super PACs spent the most on ads did not end up winning in the race. And in some cases, the biggest spenders were the biggest losers. Now, according to, as I said, the International Business Times and data and ad spending from SMG Delta, the Republican presidential field spent a combined $43 million in Iowa for TV ads. Now, think about that. Iowa, the TV networks in Iowa love caucus season. They love being first in the nation because they just got an influx of $43 million. Now, what did they get for that? Well, as I had said, they spent, people like Jeb Bush and a super PAC spent $14 million and got very, very little for that. So how much does it really break down? Well, if you spend $14 million on ads and you get 5,143 votes like Jeb Bush, you've spent nearly $2,888 per vote. Ouch, man. Ouch. Now, compare that with Rand Paul. Now, Rand Paul, who actually finished just behind, actually just above Jeb Bush, he got 4. Jeb Bush got about 2.8. Well, it turns out Rand Paul and an allied super PAC spent about $58 per vote. Mike Huckabee, who of course had to drop out, he spent the second most. He spent $623 per vote. And of course, once again, it's on television ads, but this is how much he spent versus how much he got in return. Now, he spent $2 million on TV ads for about 3,000 people, 3,300 people, sorry. Meanwhile, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who did win, he was about in the middle. He didn't spend as much as Bush, obviously, and he didn't spend as little as Rand Paul. He spent about $6 million, his campaign plus affiliated outside groups, and they spent roughly about $119 per vote. Now, he got about 50,000 votes in the caucus last night. That's actually fewer than the total population of one Iowa State Senate district, but it was enough to win the caucus. Now, Donald Trump, interestingly enough, Donald Trump's campaign spent about $3.2 million, which equals out to about $74 per vote for getting second place. Rick Santorum, however, finished last place with 1,762 votes. He spent about $18. So there you go. There's sort of the breakdown of money, the money spent by the different candidates. Oddly enough, those who didn't spend very much did better. Now, you could draw some different conclusions for that, right? My conclusion that I would draw is that this is not your normal average election. Well, notice how Ted Cruz and Donald Trump didn't have to spend very much money on television ads. Donald Trump, of course, has huge name recognition because he's an entertainer. He was on television for so many years, right? Everybody knows who Donald Trump is. Well, Ted Cruz is different. He is considered the outsider. Now, he's not. We know he's not. He benefits just as much from the establishment that he hates than he wants to admit. However, he has that perception. And he hit the ground. See, spending money on TV ads isn't going to get you a whole lot. What's best, what works best, is what Ted Cruz had done. Ted Cruz, he hit the ground. He went after the evangelical vote. He courted those voters. He went into the churches. He met with the crazy-ass pastors. And he got the support of the people. He knocked on doors. And you can see the result. Spending money isn't the only thing that you should do. Spending money on TV ads. And I think a lot of people tend to gloss over how important a ground game, having a ground infrastructure really is when we're talking about the role of money in politics. Now, the thing is, money in politics, it's not so much terrible in these elections. I mean, it is because it sets a bar, right? It sets a bar. You have to have so much money to run. But at the same time, the more money you have in a presidential election, it doesn't necessarily mean you're always going to win. Now, once again, it's different when it comes to Senate races and House races, places that do not have this national media attention, especially the free media that Donald Trump specifically has benefited greatly from. But nonetheless, money is important in certain elections, more important in certain elections than it is when it comes to a national presidential election, at least spending money on television ads and how it's used. Because that's where that super PAC money goes. That super PAC money goes straight into ads. And once again, if you're Jeb Bush, if you don't have a good ground game, and if you don't have a good record, if you don't have a good reputation, all the TV ads in the world ain't going to save your campaign. They ain't going to fix it. So there's the lesson to take from this.